where it's at with the interactive interview right here online.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio featuring the interactive interview right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com and YouTube. And today we have a special interview here for you. The interview will be with a WWE Hall of Famer's son, the one and only Scott Putski, who's had a heck of a career in his own right. He's seen the Global Wrestling Federation, the WWF at the time, and WCW. Really an interesting interview that I think you guys are going to enjoy. The main reason for doing the intro here today is to remind everybody to stay tuned after the interview, and it's a phenomenal interview, to hear our wrestling discussion, our bitching and moaning about the state of the wrestling business. You can hear that in its entirety after the interview, and please do listen to this great interview. I think you're really going to enjoy it, and our thanks, again, to Scott Putski for spending as much time as he did with us. This is a great show. You guys are going to enjoy it, and thanks again for tuning in here on WrestlingEpicenter.com and YouTube. Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio, and joining us on the Newsmaker line right now is a former WCW, WWE, and GWF star, and it's a true pleasure to have him on, a second-generation superstar, the one and only Scott Putski. Scott, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. Thank you very much, man. It's good to be here, buddy.
Well, it's great to have you on the show. I don't know if anybody on the air knows the backstory, but I've been dying to get you on. I like to do interviews with people like yourself who I think really have a great story to tell. And, you know, I told you, and I don't lie to people, when I told you I was a fan of your work in GWF and WWF and WCW, I really was. So it's great to finally get you on the show. We've been doing this 9 years, so it's great to have you on.
Wow, it's an honor to be here, bro.
All righty. So I guess the first question we got to ask you is, since WCW ended, and I know you did some work on the independents, but what are you up to these days? What's Scott Putski doing these days?
Well, I'm just taking it easy. You know, I'm in between Fort Worth and Dallas, and just just living the life now. Just trying to take care of myself. I'm training. Actually, I'm in better shape now than I ever was. And I got a young son that's playing football now in junior high, and just working with him and getting him into work and, weights and stuff like my father got me into, and just enjoying life, really, man, riding my motorcycle and just having a good time.
Very good. So we were talking a little bit about you in the show leading up to this one, and we said it's kind of nice to have a refreshing story about a wrestler, because a lot of times you talk about, the movie The Wrestler, and all the guys are kind of down and out after wrestling and all that, and it seems like you're kind of the buck of the trend there. You're not quite in that position.
Oh, no. I was never into drugs. I was never a big drinker or partier. I was, just like my dad, I was, into working out and taking care of my body. And I mean, it showed. There's, you got guys that took care of themselves and guys that, had a good time. And then you got guys that did both. But I was just lucky growing up in the business. I knew, and at a young age, I was told by my father, once I finally smartened up, well, I wouldn't say young shit, I didn't smarten up to this business until I was probably in high school or out of high school. I mean, up to that point, I thought wrestling was a shoot, which it was, to a degree then. I mean, it's a lot more of a shoot. It was an MMA style work back then, as opposed to a total show like it is now. But like my father always said, and this has stuck with me, and I think it needs to stick with every wrestler or any of the boys in the business. Once you start believing your gimmick, you're dead. You're done.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, we just saw, I don't want to name names or name drop or anything, but we just saw on ESPN just a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, the Scott Hall story, and I don't think anybody didn't kind of feel sick to their stomach after watching that one.
I love Scotty to death. I mean, what a first-class guy. I mean, as a friend, the guy was first class. I mean, I love Scotty to death, and I have nothing negative to say about him. It's a tragedy what's happened, but like everything else, we don't know the whole story, and we, judge unless ye be judged. So I don't, judge Scott Hall. I know him, and I can honestly say that, in my lifetime, I've met and I've seen some of the greatest wrestlers in professional wrestling, and Scott Hall is definitely one of the top 5 as far as a worker and entertainer that I've ever been around in my life. I mean, you're talking from like we were talking earlier, Bruno Sammartino, Superstar Billy Graham, Jimmy Snuka. I can tell you that Scott Hall was one of the top 5 workers and on the mic of everybody I've ever met in the world of professional wrestling. And
you know what? I think I would have to agree. Talent-wise, he's one of those guys who just never realized his potential. He had so much more potential than he ever.
Well, yes, but happened was he was the NWO. Scott Hall was the mouthpiece of the NWO. Without Scott Hall, the NWO wouldn't have been shit. I mean, pardon my French, but in my opinion, he was the NWO. The NWO was Scott Hall. That was Scott Hall. That wasn't Kevin Nash or Hulk Hogan or any of the other guys. NWO was Scott Hall, period.
He's the one who made it cool.
Well, hey, hello, James.
Oh, by the way, yeah, Patrick Kelly, by the way, my third co-host is on the line with us as well. Patrick, this is Scott Putski, if you didn't know.
What's up, bud? But yeah, I mean, just like
I'm doing fine. How you doing, sir?
Good. Look at all the past shows. I mean, take Scott Hall out of the equation, and it's a boring gimmick.
Yeah, I think you can. And WWE tried to do it in 2002, and granted, it had, to use a television term, jumped the shark at that point anyway.
Right.
It still was nothing without him in it.
No,
so I think you could say that's true.
Well, Scott Hall was the NWO. That was the NWO. Him, I mean, without a doubt, was the NWO.
Oh, jumping back.
Speaking of Scott Hall, that also reminds me of when WWE, after he left, they tried to resurrect Razor Ramon without him, and that obviously didn't work.
That's a joke. I mean, hey, you can often imitate, but you can never duplicate.
Yeah.
So for someone like you, growing up in the second generation, I mean, your father, a WWE Hall of Famer, was there big shoes for you to fill, or did you feel comfortable getting in there and assuming the Putski name?
I felt comfortable. I mean, whether the office wanted me to be comfortable or wanted to make it comfortable for me was a different monstrosity in itself. I mean, my dad and Vince McMahon he goes way back from when his dad was there. Vince Sr. loved my father, and then my father loved Vince Sr. I mean, my father speaks of Vince Sr. like a dad. I mean, he was like a father to him, and took care of Dad, and everything was done on a handshake and a promise. My dad always told me, he said, I shook Vince McMahon Sr.'s hand. He calls Vince Vince and Vince Jr. Vinny. He said, I shook Vince's hand, and he knew I was going to be there. I came to a town, told him I'd be at a town, and I was there. And if I needed time off, he would give me time off. If I needed this, he would do that. If he told me something or told anybody something. And he tells a story one time of I mean, I'm not going to say any name, but he tells a story one time, they're in the back, and he's telling someone, you've got to do this job because this is how this angle is going to work. And in the end, after da-da-da-da-da, we're giving you the strap. And so that time came, and it didn't appear that, that the guy was going to get the strap. Well, he went to Vince and said, Vince, remember you told me da-da-da-da? Vince said, you're right, and gave him the strap that night. He said, That's what an honorable man Vince Sr. was.
Wow.
And like I said, Vince Sr., my dad will never say an ill word. He will, I mean, if anyone ever said anything bad about Vince Sr., Dad would come after you like a little Tasmanian devil.
But he doesn't quite have that same love for Vince Jr. then?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I mean, it's obvious. You saw that. I mean, it's the same thing putting me in the light heavyweight division when I was there. I was 240 pounds.
There you go. Exactly.
One that cut off 150, and Shawn. I mean, nothing against Shawn Michaels, great worker, but I mean, I think I had about 40 pounds on Shawn.
That's probably true. And I mean,
well, you know what? The WWE, they've never really been good with the cruiserweight division, so yeah, that's never been one of the.
Well, I mean, but the thing is I wasn't a cruiserweight. I was 240. And I know Ray and Hoopy, and I love those guys to death. They're $120, $130, $140, on a good day, and that's a cruiserweight. Cruiserweight's more of a lucha libre style match anyway. And, going back to the cruiserweight, the two most phenomenal cruiserweights were when Ray and Hoovy would work in WCW. And if you ever saw, I mean, you've seen those guys work. After you see those guys work, you can't watch another cruiserweight match because, I mean, nothing else can compare to that. You can't even come close to working a match like these two guys did. They were phenomenal. I mean, acrobats, wrestling, I mean, everything was so phenomenal because they were both equal. I think Hoovy was as good or better than Ray, but he just had his little attitude, which I liked. But, you couldn't, once those guys stepped in the ring, you couldn't compete with it in that, cruiserweight style match.
Mm-hmm. And you were part of that whole movement by the WWE to try to match WCW's cruiserweight division because the cruiserweight division had taken off and was so popular with the fans. Did you feel, obviously you did based on what you just said, that you were kind of misplaced there? You didn't belong in the cruiserweight division then?
Right, I don't think I did, and I don't know why he, I mean, I could do things that, I'm a totally different entity than my father was, but it took me out of my element and just kind of, it was weird. It was weird to me, and it just, to me, it just didn't work for me. I mean, and that's not the reason why I left or anything, but which was the worst mistake I ever did, but I just never felt comfortable in that division having to do, or attempt to do all that stuff that wasn't natural to me.
What was the reason that you left?
I tore my quad in the pay-per-view with Brian Christopher in that In Your House pay-per-view in Louisville. And so I was out for a couple months, and when I got back and I was ready to come back, I, contacted Bruce and Vince, and, and they're just like, well, we don't have nothing for you now, blah, 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 and kind of just put me on the back burner instead of trying to work me into something, which the angle was, I mean, honestly, I think the angle with me and Brian was a hot deal and could have really turned out to be something really good. His dad being Jerry Lawler, dad being, and they just kind of put me on the back burners, weren't doing nothing with me, and I was real good friends with DDP, and DDP was always trying to get me up to WCW. He was like, brother, you got to come up here, man. You need to come work up here. They're, paying, da-da-da-da-da. So finally, I was talking with DDP, and I was like, man, they really don't have. He goes, well, just ask Vince for your release, man, and, so I called up there, and I talked to Bruce, and Bruce, said he talked to Vince, and yeah, I mean, they said, yeah. I mean, I thought I had left on good terms. I didn't, think there was any heat there I mean, obviously there was, but, if you're somewhere and you have a family and you're trying to feed your family and you're not making any money, and then you got an opportunity to go somewhere and you're pretty much stealing money. We work Tuesday, Mondays, and Thursdays, and they send us a check every week for this ungodly amount of money. I mean, what would you have done?
Well, exactly. And, I agree with you entirely. And, when you went to WCW, we had Barry Horowitz on fairly recently. And, he's one of those guys, similar to yourself, that in WWE they used him for a while and they dropped him like a bad habit. And then he went to WCW and he was just a body and they were just there. And, if you really sat down and made a list of the entire roster that WCW had under contract in, say, 1998, you're talking about perhaps the best roster that wrestling has ever seen. The only problem was like 90% of them weren't doing anything. Right,
and the thing was is while NWO had taken off and run its course, and they were beating that horse to death, and that was all they were. That was their show. I mean, if you look back, NWO was in every segment, every 10 minutes they were coming out beating somebody up, squashing somebody. And Vince at the time, which WCW had taken the talent from Vince. His main event talent, and here's Vince McMahon being the genius he is in wrestling. You got to give him that. He's building new talent because he knows down the road those are the guys that are gonna take over. While WCW is just taking all their talent, young talent, and squashing it, and just doing nothing with it. And it's just like it's in football. Eventually, I'm a big Steeler fan. Eventually, Ben Roethlisberger is going to become obsolete, and there's going to have to be a guy that's groomed behind him that's going to have to come in and take his spot. And when that time comes, just as in wrestling, you got to pass the torch. None of these guys wanted to pass the torch. Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan, none of these guys wanted to pass the torch to the younger guys. The same freaking torch that was passed to them, they didn't want to pass to somebody else.
It would be like, to use Steeler terms, it would be like if Terry Bradshaw decided he wanted to just play one more game. I love him to death, but he'd probably get killed.
Right. But, I mean, and that's it.
Well, yeah, a real sport.
And they didn't want it. The business, like I said, and that goes back to what my father always said. Once you start to believe your gimmick, you're dead, you're done. These guys believe that they're these tough guys, that they're this, Can they really do this in real life? I doubt it. But the point is you pass the torch. It's a show, and it needs to continue to be a show, and people know it's a show. It's a show. It's the biggest work in the business. And back in the day when Dad and them worked, it was more like MMA is. I mean, it was more of a believable sport. the moves were more realistic. And in order for wrestling to really survive, in my opinion, and opinions are like assholes, everybody's got one, I think wrestling needs to go back to the reality of like an MMA style.
I've been saying that for probably, 5 years now, Patrick? And I'm not a big MMA guy. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a big MMA guy, but the writing is clearly on the wall.
Well, it's got to be a stiff work. Until they go back to a stiff work, it ain't going to work. It's not going to work. The business will die. I mean, it's, and you got to get guys that are more believable. And, I don't really watch it, so I can't say, but it's got to go back to the day of believing. I mean, the little I do see, it's just like, man, this is so hokey. It's almost comical. It's more comedy than it is realism.
And that's what it's.
I was watching SmackDown before I called into the line here, and they're doing like a Christmas show, and I'm thinking, okay, it's November. It's not even really close to Christmas time, and it's been like the most ridiculous thing I've ever watched.
Well, but I mean, and that's it. It's got to be, it's got to be intense. It's got to be, it's got to be to the point. And I mean, it's like we did that gimmick. I don't know if you ever saw that gimmick, the Cowboys from Hell. Me and Cedric, this buddy of mine, we actually had the rights to use that name and the music because we knew Dimebag and Vinny. God bless Dimebag, love him.
God bless Dimebag, absolutely.
Man, what a sweetheart of a guy. But
you knew him?
Dude, we were buddies. He was the one. He gave us the gimmick. He's like, brother, y'all are the fucking Cowboys from Hell. Y'all fucking light it up, brother. Y'all, Jack Daniels. We come out with the Jack Daniels bottles, but the thing is. What we did was real. We actually had the dudes in the back believing that what we were doing was a shoot. I mean, nobody would want to work with us. We had a handful of guys, and when we'd work with them, we'd pull them aside and say, look, dude, we're not going to hurt you. This shit, what we do is the biggest fucking work. We're going to chop you. You're going to feel our chops. Believe me. Your chest is going to be red, and it possibly could turn purple and brown from us chopping you so fucking hard, but you won't be hurt. We won't drop you on your head. Our power bombs don't hurt. My ass hurts more than your back does. I'm going to drop you through a table, and I'm going to take the blunt of the thing. You're not going to feel anything. And these guys would, when we were done, they were just like, man, thank you, brother. We'd go, dude, go to the back and fucking sell the shit out of this. And so the guys in the back hated us. I mean, and nobody wanted to work with us. But it was a work, and it was so good that the guys in the back believed our work. I just got up. I talked to Black Bart, don't you?
Actually, we interviewed Black Bart back in 2007, and it was like a mark-out
moment
at that time.
Interview Bart again. I saw Bart at a shootout not too long ago, and he still to this day he says, "You boys," and I'm gonna do my perfect Bartsky. I call him Bartsky. Putski, you some bitch, you hurt them boys. You would hurt them boys. And I was like, Bart, man, it was a freaking. Don't you tell me it's a work. Don't you tell me it's a work. Putski, I've seen it with my own eyes what you done. But and I would tell him, I'd say, Bart, they didn't feel. He goes, son, you can tell me, talk to your blue in the face, and I still won't believe it.
Wow.
I mean, we even freaking Bart. He'll tell you that. He'll tell you that. Ask him if our Cowboys from Hell gimmick say we talked to Putski and he said it was a total work. It wasn't a shoot, and he swears it's a shoot.
Oh wow.
But we did things, but we didn't flip, we didn't flop. But what we did, we made believable. And that's what was our intention of going in and doing this when we started. At least, everybody's doing all this lucha libre bullshit, flying around, doing all this crazy high spot stuff. Let's just go out and chop meat and make them think that we're beating the shit out of these kids.
So it's kind of like you were kind of like the modern day Road Warriors.
Right. And
I was just thinking the same thing.
But that's what we were, and that's what we used to me and Cedric always said, you know what we are? We are where Rob Zombie meets Barnum and Bailey. And that's what we went out there and did. That was our thing. We're the Cowboys from Hell. We're Rob Zombie. Where Rob Zombie and Barnum and Bailey met. That would be us. That was what we were. And that was our attitude, and it was just funny. And it was, to not get picked up by Vince, even Bart, because Bart used to watch. He was here as a Dallas promotion, and we were on that TV every Saturday, and Bart watched the shit out of it. It was PCW, and he never could figure it out. But it was just, one of those things that it could be he didn't own the name Cowboys from Hell because Pantera did, and didn't want to go with it.
Who owned the name Cowboys from Hell?
Cowboys from Hell is Pantera. Is owned by.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. They own it. That's theirs. Yeah, that's their trademark. But they allowed us. They were saying, brother, if you want to take that, we'll sign off anything you need us to sign off on. I mean, that was our music we came out to. We had freaking cowboy hats with devil horns on them, and came out drinking Jack Daniels.
This sounds so tailor-made for WWE television. Was that ever even in the cards or in the discussion?
Michael Hayes came down a couple times, for what, we don't know. And I don't know. Whatever happened, and that's just the end of it. But it was, I mean, this was actually one of the greatest, in my opinion, one of the greatest gimmicks that could have came out. But like I said, we were dudes that just didn't give a shit. Did you see what I had, the long kind of goatee beard, about 6-inch beard, and Cedric, I shaved my head, and Cedric had long hair and the goatee beard, and yeah. So I mean, we weren't like and I love Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, but we weren't like the Rockers. We didn't look alike. We were, it was rock and roll. One dude had his head shaved, the other dude had long, crazy hair.
That's very cool.
We didn't try to look alike, but we did our thing, and that was it. And we took it to the extreme, and that's what we said. Let's go out there and just do something different. Let's make it look real. I mean, that was our whole premise. Let's just make it look real. No matter what we do, let's make it look real. And we tell them, dude, these chops we lay on you, it's going to hurt. We're going to chop you till buttermilk squirts out your butthole, but we're not going to hurt you in any other way.
Oh, wow. So that's said and done, though. No, that's not going anywhere.
Well, we do it. We do it every now and then. We've done a couple shows, here and there, but it's just, we don't want to do. I mean, I'm at the point now is I don't want to do this smaller stuff, a whole lot, and it's not me. I just, I've been to once you've worked for Vince and you worked in WCW, it's just hard, man, to do these independent shows like that. If it was something that we were coming back and we had to work our way back through, and there was a light at the end of the tunnel, but there's not, He's not going to take that. I mean, he's not going to use us, and it's a dead issue.
Yeah, that's so. I have a couple of other questions for you about WCW, actually, and we were talking about basically you just collecting a check and all that. Did you guys, as the level that you were basically being presented as, were you guys basically just viewing it as this is just, ride it out and get the money out of this? Because it seemed to me like the writing was on the wall that there was like maybe 12 guys that they were going to use heavily, and the rest of them.
Oh yeah, exactly. And had they not been paying us so well, and the gig was so easy, I mean, there would have been a lot of guys that said, "F you, I'm out of here." But I mean, it was almost, I felt guilty. Every 2 weeks a check came in the mail, and it was just like, you just kind of felt guilty for cashing that check. But then you were like, screw them. And it was, it was almost like illegal. You know what I mean? It was like a legal way of stealing. Honestly, and I tell people this all the time. It's just like I'd get the check and I'd kind of look around thinking, shit, is somebody going to come arrest me and take my money? Because this like really, and I grew up in this business where Dad had to travel 7 days a week, and they drove to town, and here I am, I'm flying in and flying out, and we get our ticket on Friday for Monday. It was a joke, dude. It was a freaking joke. We'd get a FedEx package sometimes on Saturday for Monday. And sometimes they'd call and they go, Putski, where you at? And I was like, well, one time in Syracuse, they're in Syracuse, and it's 10:30, 11 o'clock, and they're like, well, where you at, Putski? I'm like, well, I didn't get a ticket. So I assumed I wasn't on the show. No, and so Terry Taylor's bumming around trying to figure it out. He calls me back about an hour later, which is about 1 o'clock. He goes, we got an e-ticket for you. We need you in Syracuse now. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm thinking, well, shit, finally they got something for me. They're going to do something. I get to Syracuse. I come in, got my stuff, come straight from the airport with the rental car, park, get in, run inside, look on the board. My name's not on the board. I'm like, Terry, what's up? He's like, oh, never mind, man. We don't need you anymore. I was like, all right, dude. I just drove back to the airport, checked on, back when you didn't have to pay extra for a ticket. And I just threw my shit on, and it got to the point where we worked Mondays and Thursdays. We were, of course, they're going to put all of us non-12 guys on early, and we would basically come from the airport to the show, do the promos, whatever we had to do, not get a hotel, because if we could get on early enough, we'd just drive back to the airport, get on a plane, and catch a red-eye home. And being, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at the time, dude, there was red eyes coming in all the time to DFW. So no matter where I was, I could catch as long as it wasn't, I could get on a plane by 11 o'clock, I was home that next morning.
Wow.
And didn't have to go back out till Thursday because we ran no house shows. We were a TV company.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, how could you felt bad and, yes,
you know, from a standpoint of wrestling, I wanted more, but it was just like, wow, I'm providing all this for my family, and I'm home all the time. I'm home every day. I mean, I may leave for a couple hours, but I'm coming right back. I may go to L.A., you know, and it's just like I say, I'll be like, I might be home tonight, I might be home tomorrow, and I'll let you know. So That's just the way, and that's the only reason I really tolerated it. But as far as the biggest mistake career-wise I ever made was leaving WWF or WWE. I still call them WWF. They'll always be WWF to me.
Do you think that? Well, I mean, I guess, like I said, you had the look that you know they thought they would love you with.
Right.
It didn't look like a cruiserweight, but then again, we've already covered that.
Right.
So, I mean, you got to think that at some point they would have given you something.
And he would have. I honestly believe Vince would have eventually done something because he's a businessman. And, I mean, no matter what he is, he's a businessman. I mean, and I was there, and, you know, and I'm sure they would have, you know, done whatever they had to do as far as making me, you know, pay my dues, whatever it was, which I gladly would do. I mean, you know, I went to Mexico and I went to Japan and I went through a lot of shit as compared to these guys now, these second generation, third generation wrestlers. I mean, I went to Mexico and ran the route in Mexico for a while, and then I went to Japan and worked for War. And I mean, as far as learning,
that was a crazy place to work.
Oh, it was great. But I'm telling you, I learned more there under Tenryu and those guys than anybody. I mean, that was, I mean, you worked a 15, 20-minute match full tilt every night. And, I mean, I honestly, the first time I ever went to Japan was I worked for War. Me, Bob Backlund, and Kerry Warlord were the first six-man champions War had from America. And the first night I'm there, I'm working singles, and I tear my groin. I fucking tear my groin, pardon my language, but I tear my groin. My whole leg is black and blue. I worked 2 weeks with the torn groin the very first time I went to Japan. You know, you don't get babied down there. You just go. It's either, you know, put up or shut up down there. You fight for your life, and you fight for your earnings, which I didn't mind. You think these guys now would do that? Prima donnas? Nope. I tore my groin. I got to go home.
There you go. That's probably it. Now, do you think that that's what's missing in the business today, is that now you get these developmental territories, they learn to work WWE style, they get nothing else in there?
Right. The territory, they got to go. I mean, that's what killed the business was when they took territories away. But, I mean, you got to learn. I mean, I don't know how to say it, and the only way I can say it is until it becomes more of a shoot, it's not going to work. I mean, I can sit here and shoot with you verbally as much as I want, and it's funny and it's entertaining, but unless we get out there and go hand-to-hand combat,
yep,
and make people believe that we're actually pissed off at each other, it's the equivalent of you and your brother going out and you slapbox. Y'all, you slapboxed, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely, of course, yeah.
Okay, you sitting there with your buddy, your brother, whatever, y'all are playing around slapboxing. All of a sudden, someone slaps the crap out of someone, you know, accidentally but not accidentally. And, you know, you kind of stop and go, hey, man. And then, pow, he slaps you accidentally but not accidentally. All of a sudden, now here's, pow, there's two more slaps. And then you're into it.
Yeah.
And you're fighting. And that's what this business has got to get into. It's like, okay, we know it's a work. And that was our premise with the Cowboys from Hell is we know it's a work. But, dude, I don't think these two guys are working. I don't think somebody told them that it's a work because they're knocking the piss out of these guys. You know, they're really hitting them, and we weren't, you know. And it's just like, you know, a punch. I was always taught if you can't feel a punch, don't sell it. If you can't feel a punch, don't sell it. I don't mean, you know, feel a punch full tilt, but you got to touch them. You got to touch somebody. And if they can't take that, then they don't need to be in the business. I mean, it's football. I played football. I played football with TCU, and then I had the honor of going to Houston Oilers and trying out with them, but I tore my Achilles heel. But the thing is back in the day, most of the guys were athletes, ex-athletes, football players, you know, something like that, wrestlers or something. So it was, you know, it was just they were used to that type of punishment. But it goes back to, again, like you said, WWF has their territory and they teach them their style. Well, it's just like Lucha Libre. If you watch Lucha Libre all the time, that shit gets boring. You watch Vince's stuff, you got to mix and match. You got to have midgets. You got to have, you know, high-flying matches. You got to have, you know, the big, and it's got to go back. Everybody looks alike. Everybody looks exactly like. Everybody wears black boots and black trunks right now, right? Everybody stole the Stone Cold Steve Austin.
And they all wrestle the same match.
I actually said that the other day. I said there was two guys wrestling. I don't even remember who it was. I think it was Miz and somebody. And I turned around and said to my wife, they must have had a sale on black tights somewhere.
Right, but remember, it went from the 80s, the bright, and early 90s, the bright, neon, disco colored steel airbrush shit, to everybody's wearing black trunks and black boots. Before it was who could make the coolest costume, who could have the craziest, glam rock costume. Then it went to everybody. Stone Cold made black tights and black boots fashionable. And so now everybody wears black tights and black boots. You got to go back. You've got to have your cowboy. You've got to have your Indian. You've got to have your Polak. You've got to have your Japanese guy. You've got to have your Russian. Your typical stereotypical Russian. You've got to have your Hispanic guy. You've got to have your black guy. You've got to have your, because everybody's got a favorite. Everybody's got an ethnicity. You got to have your just down the line of characters instead of mass producing one character, 100 different ways.
There you go.
I mean, don't you agree with me? We got to go back to, like I said, you've got to have, your Irish guy, your Swedish guy, your this, your that,
Well, that was, and like I said, I grew up in New Jersey. I was like the same county as the George Washington Bridge. So,
right.
I'm basically in the heart of New York, which is WWF country. And growing up,
I lived there for a while. I lived right there at 75th and Riverside.
Oh, wow. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know exactly, I know exactly what you mean. And our area up there was so diverse. And back when your father was there, that's
right.
what they played to. And,
right.
Now that they're a national company, you got different pockets. Like, I'm sure in your area, the same as in mine, you got a very large Mexican following.
Well, it's not even that. But some of them, it's your characters. Even though they're Hispanic, they may like the Oriental style guy wrestling. They may like the crazy Russian guy with his Russian, they may like the Nazi guy. They may like the cowboy guy. They may like the Indian guy. We don't know. We can't say. But you throw all that crap out there, someone's got to like something about that, right?
I think so. And
I mean, instead of having everybody, it'd be like just putting Motley Crue out there and everybody, back in the day, the music's, I mean, it's like that all around the world. I mean, in every entity. Look at the music today. You put on a song and you got to listen to it, and they go, well, who the hell is that? And they go, oh, well, that's so-and-so.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you played Led Zeppelin, you knew it was Led Zeppelin. You played AC/DC, you knew it was AC/DC. They throw a couple licks down, and you knew it. Kiss came out. Judas Priest.
You're singing my genre right here, man. You're like
right. What I'm saying, Van Halen.
Yeah.
Cheap Trick. I mean, they play a couple riffs, and you were like, dude, Cheap Trick.
I want you to want me.
Right, but I mean, they had their sound, and their sound was different from Van Halen's sound, and Van Halen's sound was different than Motley Crue's sound. Motley Crue's sound was different than, not like Rob Zombie. Rob Zombie sound. Rob Zombie comes on, it's Rob Zombie.
Yeah, it's different than anything else that's out there.
But everything else out there is the same. It's all mass-produced on a computer, and
now you turn it on, and then you sound 75 different bands that sound exactly the same as
right.
Nickelback.
It's a cookie-cutter mold. It's a cookie-cutter mold, and that's what wrestling's become, a cookie-cutter mold. Until there's individuals in this business that are totally individuals.
And you know what? Every one of those bands that you just mentioned, unless they're dead,
right.
They're still on the road, and they're still touring. And they're still
Look at Aerosmith. I love Aerosmith. And these guys, could outsell any of these little punk bands today. But that's what Vince. And then again, theories are like assholes. Everybody's got one. That's my theory. I think that you need to go back to, different. You got to have different personalities. In the business today, there's 3 personalities. And it's all rolled into one. You me tell you the 3 personalities are?
Sure. What are those? Absolutely.
Stone Cold, Undertaker, and The Rock. And they're rolled into one. Those 3, someone's stealing something from one of those 3, and that's all they're using.
And you could probably argue that. I would tend to agree with that.
Those 3 guys, that's it. They're sold.
I do want to ask you one thing about a modern situation that happened. And it's not really disbelief so much as it was the first time in at least a decade that the mainstream paid attention to wrestling, and I think they actually bought it. And that's when CM Punk won the world title, TMZ, who I think everybody knows who TMZ is, they're the paparazzi.
I love that stuff. I watch that shit at night.
They followed him around at the airport with the WWF title and were coaxing him into bashing the company because they believed, hook, line, and sinker, they believed that he had quit the company with the championship belt and told them they were a bunch of assholes.
Right.
They believed it. And that's the first time in at least a decade that I think that anything that resembled mainstream publicity actually believed that it was more than just a, cartoonish wasteland.
Hey, but you may tell you something, I guarantee you Vince had a hand in it. They knew exactly what they were doing, and Vince freaking minded that whole thing and made everybody believe it. And Vince and TMZ were in that together, I guarantee you. It was a work with both those guys knowledgeable of knowing exactly what was going on. Harvey Levin knew exactly what he was doing, and it wouldn't pass my thought process of saying he was up in Stamford, Connecticut with Vince setting that shit up.
It's very possible.
No, I mean, Vince is a smart guy. That's why I don't understand why he's put himself in this situation. I mean, he's a genius. You got to give him that.
Oh,
give the guy his props. He's a genius in this business. But it's like he lets it go on and lets other people do things when he should be actually doing it himself. Whether he may have gotten so disillusional with himself in the business that he's so too far gone.
Is it possible, though? We mentioned all these bands, the Motley Crues, the AC/DCs, and all them, and
right.
All of them have put out albums of late, and some of them are pretty good. Some of them are not so good.
Right.
And it's the situation where maybe creatively he's shot. Maybe creatively he's just out of ideas and he needs somebody to.
Well, I think what he's done, he's let these movie actors and all this Hollywood producers and Hollywood script writers write this script. You can't write a wrestling, and that's one thing about wrestling, and I do know this. I grew up in this business, and I know it like I know the back of my hand. I know the psychology of this business. You can't, if me and you are working, we cannot set out a match and say, okay, here's the match, and this is what these guys do now. They set the match out move for move from start to finish, correct?
That's what I hear, yeah.
Okay. We're in a town, we're in a town, and we've set this match up. So we know it move for move, we've done it, da-da-da-da. Well, what happens if this town at that time doesn't want that type of what we're doing? You go to different places and at different times, and, you yourself are a witness to that, what you like. You may want some type of comedy. You may not want some type of comedy. You may not want high spots. You may want somebody chopping meat. You may get a bigger pop from a big power slam. You may get a bigger chop from doing a Ric Flair face bump. You can't set out a match and say, okay, this is our match, and the people are going to like it. This is our opening spot. This is our heat spot. This is our comeback spot. This is our finish. You've got 4 sets. Let's fill in the rest on the fly. That's how we did it. Let's fill in the rest on the fly. And that's how I was taught. Because you go to different places, they may not want off the top rope triple flip Lindy, double Lindy, whatever. They may want a clothesline. They may pop more on a clothesline that looks realistic. They may pop more on a forearm to the face. They may not want a spinning back kick, back flip or something.
Right.
They may want that. Then they may. And so, okay, we've set out this match. We can't change it because this is what we've called. We don't know how to fill in these spots anymore. So you're stuck.
There you go.
And that's what's happened. You go to different places. And what I always thought, it goes on a bigger scale. Once you get over more, it's easier to do. But the point is you don't know what the people want. I mean, Hoovy and Ray could get out there and do these phenomenal things. I mean, these just mind-blowing moves, and Goldberg would give a guy a shoulder and stick his tongue out, and the place would pop the same. Hoovy and Ray put their life on the line for these matches, and I love Bill Goldberg. What a great guy, and that was his deal. But you can't tell me that's what they want. You don't know what they want. You don't know what these people want. You got to give them what they want. You can't tell them what they want, and that's the problem. Is they're telling them now. They're going, okay, this is our match, and we're going to dictate it like this, and this is what they like.
I think that's kind of, if you saw last night's edition of Raw, Roddy Piper was kind of on Cena, kind of trying to tell that story to him.
Right, and that's the thing. But you look at it, I didn't see it. But I mean, the thing is you look at the matches, and unless they're piping in cheers, you look at the people, they're just sitting on their ass, and they're sitting on their hands.
Largely that is. And you know what? That's what you're seeing a lot these days. There's a lot of piped-in noise.
Right, and boring. You hear the boring thing. You hear the this, you hear the that.
Yep.
I mean, who cares if they bring a sign in? Let them bring a sign in and start some type of controversy. Controversy sells.
Absolutely.
Controversy sells. Let these people enjoy themselves. I mean, this is what they come for. You know, if they don't like your main event guy, make the guy work and like him. That's what they used to have to do in the day. I mean, and one of the greatest workers I ever got to work with and see work was, what's his name? His kid ended up, well, I don't know if it was his real kid. I can't think of his name right off my, and I worked with him in Global when I first started. Dick Murdoch,
okay.
Oh, this guy could have you, and I witnessed this firsthand as a kid and as a worker. This guy would have you pissed off. He'd have you cheering him. He'd have you hating him. He'd have you cheering him on, wanting him to make a big comeback. He'd have him hating him. He'd have you booing him. He'd have you calling him boring, all in the course of about 5 minutes. The guy was a genius. I mean, a genius. And it didn't have to be a move. It could be a facial expression. It could be a hand expression. It could have been a no expression.
And Trevor Murdoch, by the way, he's not his son. He's a great guy, but he's not. But he looks like him.
But dude, Dickie, I witnessed that firsthand. In 5 minutes, I seen emotions change 10 times in the crowd, and it was all his doing. And it wasn't a big something. It was just something he did. It could, like I said, it was a face. It was a move. It was just a hand gesture. It was just anything.
Absolutely.
Oh, that guy was funny. I mean, and I was just, I was lucky to meet a lot of the guys back in that day. Like I said, the superstar Billy Grahams, the Brunos, the Jimmy Snukas, Wahoo McDaniels, the Bruiser Brodies, all those guys like that, man. I mean, it was an honor. Jose Lothario, back in the Texas territory.
Yeah.
It was an honor. It was just, and I
do have a question about that, actually. You still live in the area near where the Sportatorium was, and I have to ask you, a few months ago we did kind of a tribute to Global because it was 20 years since it started.
Right.
Basically, we just did a kind of a tribute to it, and why do you think maybe people like me still think so fondly of the company? Because if you go back, and I actually have about every episode on DVD now that I've pieced together, and, I go back and watch it, and it's still good. But why do I remember it being just this amazing thing that stood toe-to-toe with WWE, even though it was clearly a much smaller company?
Right. Well, it was just did you ever get to see it? Were you ever in the Sportatorium?
I was never in the sport. That's one of my biggest regrets. I never.
Oh my God! It was that place was built for wrestling. It was just a pit, and and I tell people, that building was just like a one-story building. That the ring was underground. That was like a pit. So when you walked in, it was dug in, and you went down into the ground.
Wow.
So it's like an underground type deal with just a metal roof type thing over it. It was, phenomenal. It was built for wrestling. All the way around, all four sides were, chairs, and seats and stuff like that. And the people could touch you, and you could interact with the fans. I mean, there were no rails. There were no, you came out of the dressing room. You came out from where the dressing rooms were, from where the concession stands are. So you actually had to walk through the crowd.
Oh, wow. So I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, they had security there around you, but you actually walked through the crowd. If you came out of the dressing room door and you looked to your right, there was a concession stand right there.
Wow.
And you came out of that porthole, the portholes where the thing was around where everybody sat.
Wow.
And it was a neat thing, man. And there was a lot of camaraderie there, and I learned a lot of stuff from guys like Dick Murdoch, Black Bart, Grizzly Smith, probably the greatest mind in professional wrestling, in my opinion, Jake's dad.
Yeah, there you go.
And it was neat getting to see all that, and just getting to work there. I was good friends with Devon Eric. I grew up with Kerry and those guys. They were much older, but I knew them, and Kerry, when I was playing ball at TCU, he'd come watch me play football, and I got to go on the road with Kerry at a later, when I got older. But
just a lovely guy. And the guys back then, there was no animosity. There was no jealousy. It was just like, they knew the role, and they knew that if I get over or you get over, whoever gets over, we're going to make money. It doesn't matter, who gets over. Let's get somebody over, and let's do it the way it was meant to be, and let's all make money. We all made money because, your time came and went, and they understood that.
I have 2 questions left for you. And one of the words you just used was animosity, and God, I hope you don't have any towards me after I ask this. Your name comes up a little bit with a certain female of the business, and you could choose to decline to comment, but any comments on Missy Hyatt?
I feel sorry for her, man. Honestly do. I honestly feel sorry for that girl. For her to say what she said, and she knows. She knows what was it. The whole deal with me and Missy Hyatt was a work.
Really?
It was a work. We worked together on territories in New York. I never dated her. I never had anything to do with her. So to say what she said about it, I had a girlfriend who was my wife. Why would I mess with someone like that when I had a beautiful person at home? I have a son. And that was the thing is when that came out, the whole relationship was a work.
Wow, really? See, that I didn't know.
It was a work. The whole thing was a work. We were working on the East Coast, and that was it. Talk to Scott Epstein. Ask him. He'll tell you it was a work. It's a joke, and that's why for her to say something like that was just like, wow.
Yeah.
And I feel sorry. If that's what it takes to sell her book, and she thinks that she needs that to make money, God bless her. I wish her the best. I have no ill feelings. I have no ill feelings for anybody that says anything about me or gets on the computer and types anything bad about me. It's just like, you can say what you want. The difference is be a man or be a woman and say it to my face.
There you go. And now I guess the final question I have for you is, it's been, first of all, I want to say it's been great talking to you, and this exceeded expectations. I knew it would be good, but I've really enjoyed it. It's been fun, so I hope you've had some fun, too.
Oh, I've had a great time.
My final question for you is basically, what would you like to say to your fans? And kind of coinciding with that, what do you think the legacy will be for Scott Putski in the wrestling business?
Well, the legacy won't be much because I didn't get to do everything that I was capable of doing at the time. Unless they were to bring me back now. I'm in better shape now than I was then. But, the thing is, I just never really got to showcase my talent. Be it what it is, that's what it was. I enjoyed the fans, and if it wasn't for the fans, the road would have sucked. The people were so genuinely nice, and I made a lot of friends in this business, both, the boys and fans. The fans were so great, and I enjoyed talking to them, and I enjoyed trying to entertain them. If I entertained you, I'm glad, and if I didn't, I'm sorry. I did my best with what I had and what they allowed me to do, but I have no ill feelings for this business. I love this business, and I'd love to see this business continue. But in order for it to continue, it's got to evolve, and it's got to evolve into something that's real. And we can only pretend for a while. It's got to get real. That's my opinion. Like I said, for the third time, opinions are like assholes, and everyone got it. But God bless everyone. I enjoyed my time, and you guys were great, and I had a really good time, man. And I hope we can do this again.
Well, anytime you have anything to promote, anytime you decide you want to just come on and shoot the shit, just give us a call. We'd love to have you on. We really appreciate it. And honestly, I'm not shooting smoke anywhere. I really did enjoy this. This was a lot of fun.
Oh, I had a blast with you guys, man. I told it like it was, and that's just that's just how I am. I'm not going to candy coat anything, and I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to gain or nothing to lose from it. So, like I said, God bless you guys. God bless all the fans, and just enjoy, man.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. And I guess right now I kind of feel like grabbing a cigarette and kind of smoking it. That's the first interview we've done in a while. And what I love to do, honestly, while I love the Hogan interviews and the Flair interview and all those kind of big guest interviews that's going to bring in the listeners just because of who they are, I truly get a bigger kick out of interviews like Black Bart, like Rip Rogers, and like Scott Putski, that are not necessarily the hugest names in the business that we'll ever hear, but their story is just so interesting, and I just get a feeling about them that they're going to give me a great interview, and, man, that was awesome. I really enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really was. And, that seems to be a trend with us, where we'll get those lesser-known guys, and they'll just give a phenomenal. They got a lot of stories to tell.
Absolutely, and the guy that was there all around everything. But Patrick was just saying a second ago that he's been watching perhaps the worst wrestling show he's ever seen.
It's up there.
Wait, Patrick, you were watching the Urban Wrestling Federation?
Oh my God, that's horrible, isn't it?
Is that show as bad as it sounded? Because I remember reading that they were going to start that up, and it sounded horrible.
Like their world champion, left the company, and he more or less made a statement saying, I really don't need a white guy telling me what it's like in the ghetto. I've actually been there, and I know that it's not like Grand Theft Auto.
It's run by a white guy?
Apparently.
Wow.
Well, I hate to say this, but here's just my observation. There is a large number of people that are white that have this weird obsession with what they perceive to be the African-American culture in America. And
yeah, he's called Vince McMahon.
What?
He's called Vince McMahon, and he creates characters like Slick and Crime Time and Ron Killings when he was a babyface and things like that.
What about Ron Killings as a heel? Apparently,
I don't know what that is. I have no idea what that was.
Did they ever explain why the hell he kept calling everyone Little Jimmy?
I think it had to do with Cena's fans are kids, so he calls them Little Jimmies. I think. Yeah.
There was a part of me that was almost wondering, okay, are they going to bring someone up from developmental with the first name Jimmy just to feud with R-Truth?
Big Jimmy.
Oh, God. I could actually see them doing that.
Yeah, well, actually, a little bit of a news item. R-Truth got suspended for failing a wellness policy and got beat up by Miz, so that's the end of their union.
Which
he's probably going to come back as a babyface.
Yeah, which I think you nailed it in your video blog. It was apparently all John Cena needed to do to get rid of R-Truth and Miz as a team is tell them to break up. It's
that's basically what happened.
You watch this, oh, come on, that is something out of a cartoon where the hero...
That's like a glorified Looney Tune segment, with Bugs Bunny in disguise telling Elmer Fudd, oh, the bunny's over there. Or so that's what that was, basically.
It's duck season, rabbit season. And it's like, come on, Daffy, you're a duck. You should be saying duck season fire. Yet every time Bugs manages to trick you with that.
Yeah. But the difference is that Looney Tunes are actually funny, and this, I don't know what, it's not that, the end, okay, if they needed to end the Miz and R-Truth union, okay, fine, whatever, I get it. But the reasoning behind it was so stupid and so juvenile that it just, it doesn't work.
Well, right, and here's the thing. There were other ways you could have broken that team up and gotten the same effect almost. You could have had, Miz just come out and say, there's there's a lot of things we can blame for our loss at Survivor Series. But the simple truth is, and then bang, hit him with the skull-crushing finale, it's you. You're holding me back. Hits him with the skull-crushing finale again. Then, hey, you have that actually at least would make sense because, it's like, okay, John Cena didn't tell you to break up with him.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. They had okay, what's the reason for the split? It's like, well, they blame each other for the loss. There you go. That's your reason.
Right. It's so simple. And then as you were talking about, we had a very special Tuesday night SmackDown, which was, I was watching a little bit of it too.
It's not even December yet. WWE, what the hell?
I don't know. I think they're desperate. They're throwing crap against the wall. They're not sure what they're going to do. I almost feel like in a weird way because they don't have John Cena in a title feud to build around every single show around. They're just completely confused as to what to do now because they're trying to hold him out of the title picture until after WrestleMania.
I guess I don't know, but I mean, remember when I was blown away by this is a Christmas show, and okay, it's not even December, but all right, well let's roll with this, and it felt like every bad thing that Vince Russo is usually accused of was seen on this show, except for a shot title change. That doesn't make any sense. Every bad thing that Russo ever gets accused of was on this show. There was a pole match. There were pointless stipulations. There were magical hugs that teach English. This actually happened. I'm not kidding.
Wait. There was a magical hug that taught English.
Yeah, did you see Hornswoggle's Christmas wish?
I'll tell you what. I watched the Battle Royal, and I watched Sheamus, the man that used to be such a badass, laugh as he got tricked by a midget, and it was time to come on.
Yeah, he's an idiot.
Yeah, but then it was time to come on and do the interview, so I was like, okay, I might as well just call in. So explain to me what happened.
They were backstage, and the Hornswoggle was sitting on Santa's lap, and it was obviously Mick Foley dressed up as Santa, and he's... Good Lord, I can't even believe I'm going to say this. Sheamus told Mick that Hornswoggle's Christmas wish was that he would be able to talk. And as Santa hugged Hornswoggle, then all of a sudden he could speak.
Did they at least go for like a shock joke and say something like, "No, moron, my Christmas wish was that you bring back the Cruiserweight division"?
No. Well, the joke was that at the end, Roddy Piper and Dusty Rhodes were sitting in front of the eggnog, saying it's like, wow, that Santa's a great guy. And then Mick Foley walks in dressed up as Cactus Jack. It's like, hey guys, what's up? It's like, but Mick, weren't you over? And then they pan over to where Santa was sitting, and Santa's gone. It's like, oh my God.
See, this is the thing WWE needs to remember, and we talk about this a lot. It is a television show, but it is a television show of a fictionalized sporting event. That stuff works fine for, I just want a Modern Family. Like doing a segment like that where you think it's the dad, and then they look over and they realize, was that really Santa Claus? No, I couldn't. Something like that works on a fictionalized TV show. This is supposed to be a freaking sporting event. Okay, it's like, for the love of God, I'm like, what the hell are they thinking?
And you know what? And this whole entertainment variety show thing that they do, they're not even good at it. That's the thing that pisses me off. It's like, you know what? If you're actually good at it, I'd probably give you a pass. But you suck at it, so fuck you. And, yeah. Thank you, Dave.
That's funny.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like bullshit, half-assed Looney Tunes. Like it's a shitty version of every form of entertainment you've ever seen thrown up on the screen, and it's awful.
Right. Well, I mean, it's something we always talk about. It's Vince wishes he could be more than a wrestling promoter. He's tried to do. I mean, hell, he still has a movie division, just so he can say,
"Hey, look, successful."
Yeah. And you know what? It seems like now he's like, oh, I'm not doing a wrestling show anymore. I'm doing a variety show. I mean, let's face it. I mean, he has guest hosts. They do musical numbers, more or less. It's like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
And, you can date that back all the way back to the beginning, though. I mean, what was the first thing that Vince did? Well, one of the first things that Vince did after he took over from his dad, he created a show called TNT, and he tried to make himself wrestling's version of Johnny Carson, doing sit-down interviews and presenting it like Alfred Hayes was the Ed McMahon of the show. So Vince has always wanted to be more than a wrestling show, and you know what? At some point, I hope he comes to terms with the idea that he is the most successful wrestling promoter that there has ever been, and for some reason, he decided to not do what works anymore, and I don't get why. And I think if he did, it would still be working now.
Well, I almost hate to say this. There's a part of me that has to wonder if he views it as, I've already conquered wrestling, though. I don't need to do a wrestling show anymore. I won. So why would I keep doing that when I already succeeded? So that's something I wonder sometimes. If in his head he's like, well, I am the greatest wrestling promoter of all time. I don't need to prove that anymore. So I'm gonna go off in the way I want to do it.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Maybe
Speaking of like Vince's outside projects besides wrestling, have any of you ever watched any footage from the World Bodybuilding Federation?
I have, and I watched the guy that was, I guess, he was on so many steroids, and when he went off them, it caused his belly to swell. And the guy that won the whole thing, Gary Stratham, and I honestly am convinced that Vince has his hand in his pants.
Yeah, it is one of the, listen to the commentary, it is one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life, because Vince sounds like he's going to cum himself. Like he's just going to cream all over his pants, looking at these guys with these, jacked up physiques. And Bobby Heenan, who I had no idea, I just started watching clips of this like a week ago. Bobby Heenan, who clearly was not enjoying himself, at least that's the impression I got, was being sarcastic, and he was saying things like, "This is the greatest show I've ever seen. What a sport. This is great." So
true story. I have to share this. I have to interject. There's a true story here. The wrestlers were jealous of the WBF guys, and Bobby Heenan was one of them who wasn't a fan of it either, but it was what Vince wanted to do. And they did a big thing. I don't remember where it was. It was some kind of outdoor event, and it was going to be
the tug of war.
The tug of war. Kurt Hennig goes to Bobby Heenan and says, "You know what? What's the bet? It's us wrestlers against these guys with ridiculous bodies, all covered in baby oil. Let go of the rope. They'll fall down. The sand will stick to all over them. They'll look like jackasses." That's what they did. That was Kurt Hennig. They sabotaged that intentionally, just to make them look like jackasses.
God bless Kurt Hennig. That's great.
Oh yeah. Oh God, I mean that's one of those things. Like someday, if I ever have children, I hope that I have a son, and that I can tell them things like this. And I would just assume they don't want to say, "So wait, they tried to be a bodybuilding company, and they did football games."
Both of which failed horribly.
Miserably.
Well, I'm stunned they still have a film division, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. Have you guys ever seen the McMahon DVD?
Bits and pieces. I've never actually watched the whole thing.
Well, when they get to the XFL segment, they more or less try to take credit for everything you see on Fox and CBS today. They're like, "Yes, well, we were the first people to have a sky cam. We were the first people to, show this shot, and, Joey Styles is, Joey in full on, I'm trying to keep my job mode is like, honestly, it wasn't that the football was bad. It's that the wrestling-hating media didn't want to give Vince McMahon credit. No, the media, the football was bad, you moron. That's why when your MVP is Tommy Maddox, you know you have a bad league.
Yeah, the football was bad, and a lot of the shit they did was obvious Vince McMahon wrestling shock play, like a feud between Jesse Ventura and one of the coaches. Why are we doing this?
Which the coach actually ignored. Which, there are reports that the whole people Vince especially got upset with the coach because he would never respond to it because he was a football coach, not a pro wrestler.
Exactly. And you had the cheerleaders being sold as like sluts, basically. Which, I mean, if you look at their outfits, they're really not that much worse than what the NFL cheerleaders do, but one promotes them a little classier than the other, and it doesn't feel like I'm watching like a fucking Vegas strip show.
Right, and Jerry Lawler in his book was like, yeah, and then NBC got scared of it. They were like, you can't talk about the cheerleaders. You can't show the cheerleaders. You can't do anything controversial. It's like, well, then the football sucks, so what the hell are we going to do? It's like, well, that's your biggest problem. People don't want to watch shitty football. There's a reason why the New England Patriots versus the New York Giants sells out, and the St. Louis Rams versus the Arizona Cardinals is blacked out locally. And James can't get mad at me for that because I took my own shot at my own team.
Which, yeah, we're all crying right now. We're all suffering at this point in time.
Yeah, that was last night was fun. That was you almost got the sense that Drew Brees started playing with his eyes closed just to make it more interesting, and he still was throwing touchdown passes.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? I didn't even watch the game, not because I was like, oh, I don't want to watch him get killed. It was like, because, you know, us football fans, we have our, like, weird superstitions, and I'm trying to find one that works. And I was like, you know what? If I don't watch, maybe they'll play better. But then I looked at the score, and I'm like, oh, no, it got worse. Oh, well, okay. Try something new next week.
Which I will say this. All the credit in the world to Eli Manning. He has played great this season. Last night it was the first half, no one could catch a ball. And in the second half, when they finally started catching the ball and producing points, the defense just was like Swiss cheese.
Yeah, I don't know what to. You know what? Like all the problems we've had this year, I'm like, it's not Eli's fault. I mean, Jesus Christ, what can you do? And our O-line is terrible. I mean, he gets no protection.
Right.
I don't know what's happened, and that's the reason our running game sucks so much. That and the fact that Brandon Jacobs is an asshole. But you know,
guys that hurt. He's had a ton of injuries.
Yeah, we have, but it's a lot of progress. I'm already thinking, okay, let's rebuild for next year. Yay!
All right. Yeah. So hey, Patrick, I have to ask: is there any prayers to Daniel Bryan win the world title?
Oh, no, of course not. I mean, the match itself, it was the best part of the show. It wasn't, like, the greatest match in the world, but it was at least, like, something semi-wrestling related. And it was, like, not goofy. But, yeah, no, Mark Henry won. And there was no, like, I thought there was going to be, like, a shocker or surprise at the end. But, like, you know, they've been showing all those Kane promos. Maybe that's it. Or maybe Big Show will come out and rip the cake.
Don't make me think that there's going to be a Kane-Mark Henry feud.
Well, yeah, but nothing happened. It was just Mark Henry won, and that was it.
Okay, so, you know, this is something God, how horribly have they built up Daniel Bryan since he won?
I'll be honest, I forgot. He was one of those guys, because I was watching the show tonight, and that, you know, the Battle Royal and some of the matches they had, I was like, wait, Tyson Kidd still works there? Wait a minute.
Yeah, I was thinking
the Usos still work.
I was making that same joke on Facebook. Like, every time somebody got eliminated, I would type in, wait, Jimmy Uso still has a job?
Johnny Curtis? Who the hell is Johnny Curtis? I don't even know who that is.
There actually is a little story on Johnny Curtis.
Okay.
He was the winner of NXT Season 4, where the winner was promised a tag title shot with his pro, i.e. something that made some sense. You have the young rookie with the guy he's been working with for weeks, they get a shot at the tag team titles. His pro was R-Truth. And around the time he won NXT, they immediately turn R-Truth heel. So there goes that. Because then he goes on to feud with John Cena. And the bit has just kind of been this guy hasn't been used since. Like, he did, like, a whole bunch of really weird promos backstage where he would say things like he would spill milk, and he'd be like, I'm not going to cry. Or he'd be like, here's a salami, here is a sandwich, here is the mustard. I can't cut the mustard. But I think they were kind of, like, joking with people, like, oh, yeah, here's the kid we never used. It's like, except it never led anywhere. It's like, he just shows up and does these weird things.
Oh, wow. That's pretty amazing. But, yeah, there were a lot of those guys. Up until last week, Daniel Bryan had actually become one of those guys where I forgot he worked for the company. It's like, it reminded, and here's perfect comparison, Bret Hart and WCW. It's like, wow, Bret still works there? Huh. And it was like that. It's like, oh, Daniel Bryan's getting a title shot. I'm like, wait a minute. Daniel Bryan still works there? I completely forgot because they've done nothing with him for 4 months. They've done nothing with him pretty much since he won the briefcase.
Yeah, which we've seen it before, like Punk and Miz especially got it where it was
Swagger,
like, oh God.
Yeah.
Well, Swagger was weird. They had him win the belt like I think the Friday after WrestleMania. But, you know,
because SmackDown was taped on Tuesday, so he literally won it 2 days later after a year of not winning anything.
Yeah, but Brian, I mean, it happened a lot with Swagger. Punk, especially when he won the Money in the Bank briefcase, but then again, at least he got to appear on Raw and SmackDown and stuff. He would lose, but at least he was appearing on them. Daniel Bryan, I think, has been appearing mainly on Superstars.
Wow.
It's like, really? It's like you're giving Big Show his 158th major push, and you're pushing the ultimate case of dead wood, Mark Henry, yet you won't push Daniel Bryan. You won't even let this guy appear on your TV show. It's like, what? Yeah. What the hell is wrong with you people?
Yeah, it's bizarre. I don't even know what to tell you. It's just, I mean, tonight's show was a complete mess. And after Raw, I'll be honest, I didn't think Raw last night was that bad compared to what it has been lately. It was actually a semi-decent show overall.
Yeah.
Compared to what they usually do.
I'll be honest, I only really got to see about 30 minutes of it because I had to go into work early and I got out of kickboxing around. I do my kickboxing until 8:30 out here, so I missed the first half hour, and then I had to be out the door at 9 o'clock, and then between stopping to get something to eat, I only really saw about a half an hour of the show. I mean, it seemed okay. I mean, I liked some of the stuff they're doing with Wade Barrett and Randy Orton, and that was really, I think, the one thing I saw. And I mean, at least they're actually building Dolph Ziggler up, not Dolph Ziggler, but Zack Ryder up, even though they chose to give John Morrison a title shot out of nowhere.
Just speaking of John Morrison, he's apparently done with the company. Did I read that right?
Yep. Well, actually, he's dead. He got blown up Vince McMahon. If you've never seen Zack Ryder's YouTube show, at least check out the last one, because the joke is that I guess he was going to take over Zack's show, and he's like, bro, please don't take the show from me. It's all I got. And he's like, go away, man. I'm off to Hollywood. He jumps in a white limousine, and then they show the clip of Vince's limo blowing up.
That's pretty funny, actually.
Yeah, then like the kicker is, I guess, like on the show, that Zack Ryder's father is a huge John Morrison fan, so much so that he refers to John as his son. So he's crying. His eyes are like, you guys don't know what it's like to lose a child. And they're like, Zack's fine.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and the rumor is, I mean, and some people are going to say, oh, they're picking up rejects again. TNA is very interested in getting John Morrison, and I say, you know what? If you own a major wrestling company, which TNA is, and you're not interested in a guy like John Morrison, you're a fucking idiot.
I mean, what did we talk about for years? What did we talk about for years? This guy has main event potential and can be cultivated and molded into something really good, and WWE, for whatever reason, never pushed him. They say it's like, oh, well, they didn't like, it was Melina. It was her fault. And I'm like, look, I don't care that his girlfriend's a slut and a bitch. I really don't care. Why should that affect him? He's talented. He does everything to the best of his ability, and he's one of the best guys you have, and you do absolutely nothing with him. I don't understand it.
Well, I'll go this far. That would be the equivalent of Bill Belichick benching Tom Brady because he doesn't like Gisele Bündchen. Like, I know that there's a little different because Gisele doesn't work for the Patriots in any capacity, but it's like, who cares? In terms of what he can do in the wrestling ring, John Morrison is amazing. He is, you can actually argue he's a very one-of-a-kind athlete. There are things he does that I don't think a lot of people are able to do, and there's no one that really pulls off that character as well. I mean, Brian Kendrick tries, but he doesn't come close. Morrison actually can do this weird stuff, and you're like, yeah. And, the way he flies in the ring, and just, I mean, who wouldn't love to see some of the matches, who doesn't enjoy a John Morrison match? I mean, if you're a wrestling fan, you should enjoy this guy's in-ring work. And, I mean, This is the guy I remember when Punk won the title, and it looked like they were building him up to challenge Punk at WrestleMania. We were so excited about.
I'll be honest. I remember back then in '09, like I thought Morrison was having the best matches in the company by far.
He was. I mean, he had some great matches with Ray. He had a really good series of matches with Dolph Ziggler and even Drew McIntyre.
He had some great matches with Punk on TV. I remember.
Punk. I mean, it's just like, wow. This is the guy that we thought, man, this is the guy that is perfect. This is the guy they can build, and but it's like, oh well, you know what? We're not going to do it for whatever reason. I mean, first he just wound up being stuck kind of in that mid-card range. And I'll even say this: earlier this year, he became the #1 contender to the WWE title. He challenged for the title on Raw. Jerry Lawler got a pay-per-view title shot. And I know everyone's going to go, well, he's a legend. He's earned it. It's like, yes, but for the love of God, how many opportunities has Lawler had in his career? He's 62 years old with a bad leg and massive man movies. Who's going to keep...
Go ahead.
For the long-term health of the company, it should be John Morrison challenging.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And, the thing about Jerry Lawler is, like, for those of you who say that he's a legend and he deserves it and that he deserved that main event push that he got or whatever, how old are you? Because I have to wonder, you're either so old that you remember Lawler in his prime and you're just a mark for the guy, or you're so young that you don't remember what Lawler's been like for the last 20 years. I first saw Lawler. My first exposure to Jerry Lawler was him as an announcer for the WWF, and he's been a comedy character and a bitch for the better part of 20 years.
Yeah,
so now
it's like
all of a sudden he gets a title shot. I mean, and he's beating everybody left and right. I mean, I don't buy that. I don't believe that. And it's horseshit.
I mean, and again, I don't think Morrison had a match at WrestleMania. But guess who did? Jerry Lawler and Michael fucking Cole.
Oh, yeah, a WrestleMania match. He just didn't do anything.
After WrestleMania, Morrison did. That's probably why I think he ended up not getting re-signed, because he upset poor little Trishie.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can understand. I do think he was wrong in some of the things that he went about it. But, at the end of the day, it's just like, here's a guy that has a lot of talent, and they decided, you know what, we're not going to push you for whatever reason. Yeah, we are going to give these guys like Alberto Del Rio, who, draws crickets, and we're going to give massive opportunities to R-Truth. I mean, how Morrison turned into R-Truth as bitch boy this year. He just kept getting beat up by the guy. It's just like, wow, how can you keep turning this guy, down and not using him when you have that much potential? And it's like, there has to be a point where it's like, okay, we get it. You don't like how he is with his girlfriend, but you know what? Fucking shut up about it and just move on.
Of course, this is the same company that pushed, who was I thinking of? Pushed, Stone Cold Steve Austin was a wife beater. I mean, let's call it what it is. He was. Triple H cheated on Chyna to be with Stephanie. That's pretty much confirmed. But because, of who Stephanie is, that was...
How about, I'll say this. How about Shawn Michaels, a guy that had numerous just meltdowns and acting like an immature prick, and, he once... on a major pay-per-view, this is a guy that got pissed off when Vader didn't get in the right position, so what did Shawn do? He stomped him in the head like so much Endamican Sue on Packer bicep.
Yeah, I've seen that match. He did, yeah. And
look, I love Shawn. Shawn will go down as one of the greatest workers of all time, but the guy was a jackass backstage. He's a guy who, shows up, and was pilled out of his mind at certain nights, It's like, okay.
He got his ass kicked at a bar.
Yeah. This is a guy who, for people that don't know it, the reason that there were 2 Intercontinental Championship belts is Shawn failed a drug test, and he said, okay, you can suspend me, but I'm not sending back the belt. It's like the little boy that took his ball and went home. It's like, I'm going to hold on to this belt, you're not going to, I'm going to make sure I have it. And it's like, and they were smart enough to do something with it when he came back, but it's like, yeah, seriously, and this might piss people off, Bret Hart, is a guy, that was known to have that quick temper and yell, and all the problems he had with Shawn backstage. He got a major opportunity. It's like, so it's not like being a perfect gentleman is a requirement in the past in the WWE.
If anything, Jomo sounds like he's a pretty passive guy. He lets his girlfriend do whatever she wants, and he just does it like, hey, that's cool,
Here's the thing, you also have to wonder, it's like, okay, he might be letting guys screw her. But to say when the reason he lets that happen is he's off screwing everybody else.
Yeah. But yeah, Morrison in TNA, I think he'd be a perfect fit in TNA. If they book him correctly. Now, my idea right off the bat, either put him in the X Division and let him go nuts there, because the X Division needs more of a spark, and I think he'd be a perfect fit. Or bring in Joey Mercury and have them reform M&M and let them rule the tag division.
We'll see what happens. I think Joey Mercury's retired. I think he suffered some injuries.
Okay.
He just said that's it. I can't do this anymore. It'd be a wonderful idea. What I would honestly do is I'd do something with Austin Aries where he'd say something like, well, you know what? I'm going to give anybody in the world a shot at my belt. And out comes a guy in a mask. And that guy in the mask beats John Morrison, beats Austin Aries. He pulls off the mask and all that hair falls out, and it's John Morrison. You're going to have Taz and they go nuts saying, oh, my God.
Yeah, I think he's a worthwhile investment for TNA. Now, what they shouldn't do, I don't want them to bring him in and then do basically what they did with Christian where, okay, we'll just put him in the title picture right away. Or like what they did with Rob Van Dam. I think they need to kind of start Morrison from scratch, basically, and kind of let him grow and develop within their own company and let him become their own guy. And I think the X Division would be the perfect place to do that with him.
Well, I'll say this. I think with Christian, the reason they did it that way was, you have to remember that year Christian became probably the hottest act in the whole WWE. And they no question. They wouldn't pull the trigger. And with Rob Van Dam, I think it's sort of a similar thing where he was for so long, he was that guy that everyone thought should be ruling the heavyweight title picture and wasn't. I feel like with Morrison, because he hasn't been a main eventer, that they won't do that right away with him. I also feel like if you look, I think they have a plan. I think it's Bobby Roode will be in kind of holder feuds for a couple months, where he's going to do this thing with AJ, and then next month, and James Storm is feuding with Angle. And I think if I'm booking that company, which I know I wish I was, but I'm not, at Lockdown, which is in April, it's the rematch to settle the score. It's James Storm, it's Robert Roode, it's for the heavyweight title, and it's in a cage. Roode can't run. No one can stop Storm.
Yeah, I think I hope they give that long build up to Roode and Storm, because I think that's a rematch worth building, and I think they can get a lot out of that.
Well, I think that's why you saw why Kurt Angle's the one that gets the credit for attacking Storm. Because I think they see the potential in that. I think they want to do the feud with Angle and hold off doing, because that gives Storm something to do, then go after Bobby Roode. Because honestly, if they hadn't done that, and it's like, okay, I'm back from my injury, it's like, why aren't you going after Bobby Roode? It's like, you almost have to just, now it's like, okay, I'm going to take care of the guy that hurt me first, then I'm going to go get my belt back.
Right, and they can get a lot out of that. And then if you look at the heavyweight division, who could challenge Bobby Roode, I mean, he's got a lot of options. So, yeah, they can definitely stretch that thing out. They could probably even get it to Slammiversary if they want to do that, and let the two originals headline their 10th anniversary pay-per-view.
Which I hope, that would be a great idea. That might not. Yeah,
whatever they want to do, but
yeah.
Yeah.
As long as it's what we want to see.
Oh yeah. So,
yeah, well, don't say that, because then someone could say, well, what I want to do is put the belt back on Jeff Hardy.
If they do that, I will lose. I mean, to me, Jeff Hardy, it's like you should be curtain jerking for a year after your return. You should be, like, humbled and embarrassed and begging on your hands and knees for a job. And then once you've proven that you're, you can be clean for a year, maybe we'll consider putting you back in the title picture. But,
Well, we'll see. You might get a little ticked off then at TNA in the next couple of weeks.
I will say I haven't read the spoilers yet, but we shall definitely see. But yeah, there's not a whole lot else going on. They've got the preview packages, the WWE that are coming out. There's one hyping the return of Mass Kane, which I don't really understand because they didn't burn him on the way out. So why is he wearing the mask?
Exactly. And here's another thing. A lot of people, James Walsh included, have suggested, and with James it's different, but I've heard people say, oh, well, they should put the mask back on him. That will fix everything. No. Putting the mask back on it will not take all the years off of his body. It won't relight the passion in this guy that I think he hasn't had in years. I'm sorry. I have long held my belief that Glenn Jacobs is a guy that had a bunch of stupid gimmicks, got one decent one, rode it for a year, and since then has lived off that 1 year purely on nostalgia. And I know some people are going to disagree with that, but I don't give a rat's ass. He sucks. The mask will not fix everything. This is a stale, boring character played by a very old wrestler that should be looking to wrap up his career.
Yeah, well, I mean, that world title run he had last year was one of the worst things I've ever seen. So, yeah, there you go. I wouldn't be opposed to them closing out the Kane character with another run in the mask, but I just wish they had set it up better. Like, okay, when they brought back the Dead Man Undertaker, they buried him first, so like we knew it was coming, and that made it, gave us something to look forward to come Mania time. With Kane, it's like, oh, he got attacked by Mark Henry, which, okay, everybody's getting attacked by Mark Henry these days, so no big deal. It felt like he's just a, cannon fodder. And now all of a sudden all these previews are coming out that he's going to be wearing the mask again. I'm like, well, why didn't you just burn him? Because that would be, like, the best way to do it, I think. Right. Just, like, throw him into a flaming room or something and have him come back wearing, the fucking mask. I think that would work.
Agreed. I mean, you have to, when you do stuff like this, sometimes you have to have a reason, or the smart thing is to have a reason. The reason of, oh, I just want to wear the mask again is not a good reason, which is more or less what it appears they're going to do. Kane decided to wear his mask again.
Yeah.
Which, I have to wonder, has there ever been any character who's had his backstory redacted, redone, retold, messed up, screwed up, switched up than Kane?
Oh, absolutely. That's why when they did that book, that was supposed to be about the life of the Kane character, it's like I was interested in actually reading that book just to get an actual timeline on how all this fits together, because I thought he lived in Paul Bearer's basement for 20 years or something. I was like, no, apparently, he lived in an asylum? Okay. No, wait, he was dating Katie Vick? What?
It's
okay.
There was another book that I read. It wasn't.
Oh, he wasn't burned? You've been telling us he was burned for 5 years? It's like, oh, no, he's not burned. Oh, well, okay.
Remember, originally he couldn't talk. Like, they made a big deal out of him that he couldn't talk. And then when he did talk, he used one of those, voice boxes like the people that smoke cigarettes for, like Jimbo from South Park uses. The metallic, and then it's like, oh, now he can talk. It's like, really? Wait, he had friends? He could drive a stick? It's like, yeah, what the hell's going on here? I mean, somebody was saying, it's like, you have to wonder, did they get confused with Kane and Glenn Jacobs' real life?
Well, I hope that Glenn Jacobs never knew a Katie Vick.
Well, that would, what would almost be funny is like if like one day he was telling a story backstage and he said something like, yeah, I was driving home from this party, and it was right after I started training in wrestling, and I got in this horrible car accident, and, like, the poor girl, I thought she was dead at first. And someone said, that's a great idea for a character, for a storyline. We're going to do it. Like, wait, guys, no. Guys, that goes against everything I've been doing for the last 10 years. Hold on, guys. It's like, really? Like, if we ever get out, like, when he retires, like, I would like to have him on the show, believe it or not, just so we could ask him, okay, seriously, what the fuck went through your mind when they said to you, yeah, we're going to ignore all this stuff with that you've been doing for all these years and just have it be that Kane was in a car accident and killed a girl, and then apparently then Triple H's going to say you raped her.
You know what his answer will be? He'll probably say, oh, I was just doing what I was told, and hey, at least I didn't have to get in the box. So
yeah, that was his answer. James did interview him once, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. I don't remember if Katie Vick came up.
Yeah. Well, I also remember this. Remember May 19th? May 19th?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, God. And then they had the fake Kane, who was Festus / Luke Gallows. It's like, I honestly thought like the revelation was going to be, and I think what they were going to go for was that the Kane with the bald head was a fake Kane, and the real Kane was the new one.
Which that would have been interesting. Although the problem was the new Kane, well, the fake Kane, who looked a lot like the original Kane, only shittier, and that was the problem. He looked like shit in the getup, so it just didn't work at all.
Right.
But yeah, we were getting that Kane again, and they're also showing these other preview packages with a creepy kid in the classroom saying creepy things about somebody returning and taking what's his. Now, there's two answers for who this could be. My logic is, if it's a creepy kid saying something, then it's probably The Undertaker, because that's kind of like, he's done this like 100 times, where it's like, he's making his return and there's a creepy kid in the preview saying something, yeah, hyping his return.
Yeah, or it could be everyone's favorite little bitch, Chris Jericho. And I'm sorry, that is what that guy has turned into on Twitter. It's like every week it's like, yeah, that guy stole my move, or yeah, I wish they would have talked to me about this, or wow, they really suck. It's like,
some people are thinking that's a work. Like, that's just going to be his new gimmick when he comes back, and these preview packages are being used to promote that.
yeah, well, who knows? I mean, I know that there were reports that the deal fell apart. Like, but you never know. Like, that could also be, you know, all these accounts are secondhand information for the most part. We only really know occasionally. We never really have a clear idea exactly what's going to happen. So, I mean, also, guys like Jericho are smart enough that they could work with the media and say, and he could be the one saying to Dave Metzler, yeah, we were talking, but then it fell apart. Stupid Metzler.
Stupid Metzler. James, was that you?
No, that was me.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard.
I'm trying to do a joke where the idea is that Jericho misleads Metzler, and then he hangs up on the phone and says, stupid Metzler.
Yeah, well, Metzler is kind of an idiot. Well, you know.
Well, I'm still waiting for Brock Lesnar to quit Ultimate Fighting and come back to the WWE. Remember that report after the Cain Velasquez fight? Everybody and his mother, Metzler was telling everyone, Brock hates fighting for the UFC. He's done. Now that he's lost the belt, he doesn't care anymore. He's going to go back into wrestling. He was already talking about it before the injury, before the loss, but now he's really serious about it. Oh, yeah, Brock does the Ultimate Fighter. Oh, yeah, Brock's going to fight Alistair Overeem in a few weeks. Yeah, for a guy that quit, that doesn't like fighting and has apparently lost all passion for it, he sure is doing an awful lot. I mean, I don't know.
He appeared on Fox when Velasquez and Dos Santos had their fight.
Yeah, their 1 minute and 4 second fight.
Which I didn't know it was that long. Like, it ended, and I was like, wow, that was fast. I thought it was like 30 seconds. I'm like, oh, they got a full minute out of him. Whoa.
Yeah, well, that was one of those things where, like, for whatever reason, the way the contracts all spilled out was, they were only allowed to do the one fight. I think they were thinking, oh, well, how often would it be just to have our first show be for the World Heavyweight Championship, which it is. And, I mean, hey, look, people can deny all they want. It drew it is the most watched MMA fight ever. Sorry, Fuckdoor, or Kimbo, or, the scumbags that ran Elite XC. But,
well, that company died a horrible death, so, yeah.
Yeah, well, which, those guys are, it's like, so, yeah, I mean, somebody even said it's like, some people are actually saying it's like, the only thing is if that fight would have gone longer, it would have got an even higher rating. But that's just kind of the risk you take with a sport like this, where you allow finishes this quickly. I mean, the flip side of it is maybe you get a football game and it winds up being a horrible game like the Baltimore Ravens versus the Jacksonville Jaguars on Monday Night Football this year.
Yeah, I mean, you never know when it's a real sport, you never know how it's going to turn out. And that's kind of my problem with wrestling. It's like, look, you do know how it's going to turn out. You can map this shit out. You can guarantee a good show because you have the advantage of being in control of every aspect of how the show works. And you still don't do it. That's kind of shocking.
Right. There are going to be weird things like guys get injured and this or that, but it's like, yeah,
right.
Yeah, but it's like, yeah, they a lot of times you think, okay, what are they not listening to what you guys are trying? What the hell are you guys even going for? And it's like now they got, like, for example, on Raw last night they had this whole thing with Roddy Piper trying to get John Cena on board with his fans. The issue isn't John Cena isn't on board with his fans. The issue is the fans aren't on board with John Cena.
I don't know what the hell they were talking about. I got confused. Well, I was like, what the fuck are you two talking about?
To be fair, though, Patrick, this is Roddy Piper post-1996. Oh,
yeah, totally. I mean, Piper's out of his goddamn mind.
It's like, is HBO here tonight? It's like during his Hall of Fame induction speech, and people were like, oh, this is so great when he's on, he's really on. I'm like, okay, the only reason he appears to be on is you had Ric Flair drunk out of his mind going night-night before this promo started.
Night-night. Which they said was the speech of the night. I remember reading the reviews the next day.
Oh, God. Oh, man. It's like, what the hell is going on here? Oh, it's like, and they keep trying, like, and I love Piper, and Piper will go down as one of the greatest promo men of all time, but he's lost his mind. The gimmick, oh, God, I mean, I still have nightmares about that, like, that brief run he had, what was it, like in the mid-2000s in WWE, where Hogan was Mr. America, and he was with Sean Stasiak, and they had Zach Gowen, and it's like, wow, Piper must have come up with this when he was complete. Piper must have shared his coke with the creative team. But, and I always felt bad for, okay, now I'm blanking on his name. It wasn't Stasiak. Sean O'Hare.
Sean O'Hare, that's right.
Who, by the way, just got arrested for assault. But I always felt bad for him in that situation because he actually had kind of an interesting gimmick going into that, where he was doing the whole devil's advocate gimmick, and I was like, oh, this could be kind of interesting. But then he got stuck with Piper, and it's like, okay, that's kind of screwed up.
Yeah, a lot of things got screwed up back then. A lot of things get screwed up now. But, God, I'm trying to think of other news and notes that are going on. Anything?
Well, there's something small I want to talk about, and I want to have a catchphrase, and it's going to be, take 5 seconds to think, Internet. Okay? And here's the thing. Last week on TNA, they did a lingerie match with the Knockouts. Everybody jumped up and said, I thought TNA was a respectable women's wrestling company. Why the hell are they doing this? See, this just proves they're no better than the WWE. But if you actually took 5 seconds to think and watch the show, you would see it's part of a much bigger story. The idea being that Karen Angle wants to tick off all the other Knockouts except for Madison and Gale, who are two chosen ones. But instead you jump all over it, and it's like you're like, oh, I just heard 3 things, so I'm going to make my guess. It's the same idiots who have told me in the past, I don't watch TNA, but I read the spoilers, so I know everything that goes on beforehand. Really, you know how every match works, you know how it all came off on TV. It's like you actually are going to say that you can review a show when you don't actually watch it. Like I'm getting like people are going to be like, oh, but it's like it goes against everything they're saying. Yes, because Karen's a bad person. She's a heel. It's like when you watch a movie and the hero gets shot. It's not because, oh, hey, it's time to make the hero feel good. It's to put something in the hero's way, an injury. His girlfriend got kidnapped, something. This is part of a story of Karen in her role as the, cruel heel runner of the Knockouts division, ticking off the Knockouts, which I think will eventually lead to some kind of big revolt.
Now, if I'm going to compare last week's Impact to this week's SmackDown, I felt like they both shows had like a similar atmosphere to them in that it kind of felt like it's like, oh, it's a holiday and not as many people are going to be watching, so let's just be silly or let's just be a little crazy or whatever. And it's like we'll not advance anything storyline wise. We'll just put on a silly little show and then move on next week. And SmackDown felt the same way. The problem is with SmackDown, it's a live show. It's supposed to be a special event, and it wasn't a holiday. It's not Christmas. Right. You have no excuse.
Right, I'll also say this. There were a lot on the SmackDown show. I understand there was a match where they pulled down mistletoe. There was. The winner's reward was they got to kiss whatever wrestler they wanted. It's like, okay, at least with the Impact thing and the lingerie or the Falling Thunder or whatever they called it, it was part of a storyline. With this, it's like, okay, the winner gets to kiss somebody. Considering the fact that Brie Bella won, and I think she's about a 50-cent trick, I assume that she can do a whole lot more.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, exactly.
It's like...
But what the hell kind of prize is that?
Yeah, it's like, okay, I get to kiss a slut. Like, are you going to cover I don't want to say defensively, like, you're going to cover my trip to the clinic, right?
But, yeah, I can't say enough how bad SmackDown was this weekend. It's like I said with Impact. Impact, wasn't one of their best shows or anything, but they didn't really try to be because it was almost like they took the attitude of, well, not as many people are going to watch, so we'll just, whatever, we'll just put on something silly.
They did a little bit with the Knockouts. They did a little bit with the world title picture. It wasn't anything too much that if you didn't see it, you won't skip. They had the thing where Rude kind of got the one-up on AJ again by, making sure that he lost. And then he didn't, AJ took a real beating in that match why Rude kind of got off easy. There was a point where he went out to the announce table. It was kind of like, guys, I didn't get to completely warm up yet, so, I'm just going to stay back here,
Which, by the way, Rude is the best thing TNA has going right now. Like, I really like what they're doing with him.
Absolutely. Yeah, honestly, I do believe the best thing would have still been to have him win the title at Bound for Glory. And if you want to turn him face, do a slower heel turn over the course of the winter. But it's like, I still kind of believe part of it is that when Kurt Angle got hurt for a month, they were like, shit, now we got to do something else. So, it's one of those situations. It's the cult saying, kind of making chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Yeah, exactly. But, yeah, and even better, they spent most of Raw last night hyping up that SmackDown special. There were like several segments dedicated to building up the show, and they did the whole thing felt like a throwaway.
Well, they did the whole thing where Daniel Bryan got interviewed by Michael Cole, which, okay, enough's enough, WWE. We get the point. Cole hates the internet.
He hates everything, apparently, except for this.
And then, they did the whole thing where, Mark Henry came out and, the thing of it was, Daniel Bryan kicks him in his bad leg. It's like, okay, shouldn't that have been the match? It's like, okay, how perfect would it have been? You have a submission wrestler and a guy with a bad leg. Have him catch him in a submission. Have him do something out of the UFC where it's like Mark Henry throwing him around, dominating, and then oh my God, do the Chael Sonnen and Anderson Silva finish. Oh my God, he's got a submission, oh, he tapped.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, yeah, that segment actually wasn't bad on Raw, and it's it's like, oh, I kind of want to see Daniel Bryan, see what happens. But
I'll say this, I mean, it's like Dana White is counting me money from the eventual Anderson Silva Chael Sonnen rematch because he knows, like, all I have to do is promote this guy beat the best fighter in the world for 4.5 rounds, and then with only a minute or so left, got caught in a submission and tapped out. That alone makes money. All the other shit Chael Sonnen has done is going to make him a whole lot more money.
No, I mean, UFC, we say it all the time, they've basically taken the pro wrestling formula and done it better than the best wrestling companies in the world, namely WWE.
I mean, Jim Cornette, the smartest thing Jim Cornette ever said was he says, basically what UFC has done is they did all hard finishes for real. Which they kind of have. I mean, at UFC 139, it was Dan Henderson versus Shogun Hilla. It was, a classic story in sports where it's like, oh my God, this one guy got off to a huge lead, and now late, the other guy is rallying back. Can he get the job done before time runs out?
Yep. Yeah, that kind of stuff works. And I don't know. I mean, that's pretty much all I got tonight, unless there are any other major news items. WWE, fuck you. Your show was terrible tonight. But, is there anything else you got?
Actually, ladies and gentlemen, breaking news. The Miz has just been suspended for a wellness violation.
I don't fall for your jokes anymore.
Damn it.
I finally got smart, so, really.
All right, well, I will make one small admission, though. I will admit it. I designed that Sin Cara t-shirt.
Well, I saw that shirt, and I was thinking, man, I'm reminded of The Little Mermaid. I'm not sure why. I can't quite, there's something in my brain. I took one look at that Sin Cara shirt, and I just thought of, The Little Mermaid, specifically the VHS copy. I don't know what it is.
That's one of those situations where it's like, no one's going to notice it, but then one person does, and everyone's like, oh, my God.
Yeah. It's like the C-3PO card that had a penis on it. It's like the Billy Ripken fuck you card. Pretty awesome. It's amazing how nobody catches those things, but then one person does, and it just snowballs from there.
Well, there's apparently an episode of Three's Company where you can see John Ritter's penis.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I guess it was like he was supposed to be in his underwear, and I guess during the course of filming, the underwear kind of rode into a position that exposed him, and nobody noticed it, and that got edited into. That was the take they put in the final copy.
Ooh. And yet Suzanne Summers, that never happened to her. That's a crime.
If only.
Yep. But, that's all I got for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and thank you to Scott Putski for doing that great interview with us. Thank you to James for setting everything up, and thank you, Nick, for staying on with me. I can't believe it. Wow, it's already almost 11:30. It's getting late, so I got to go to sleep, and you have to go to work, don't you?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do.
All right, well, have fun.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Patrick. I'm going to have a whole lot of fun putting away cigarette orders. Yeesh.
Oh, yes. Well, again, thank you, everybody else, and we'll see you soon, and stay tuned for more.